finish. That's what the board is going to be. Okay, this old school, what we call natural finish coat. Now, I've just put new hot water in here. Now I'm going to turn this over. Now what you do is you put a bit of talcum powder on here, and that way you don't mark the finish coat, okay? Because what tends to happen if you don't, the finish coat will, I'll rub a bit on here where it's, I don't want any, there we go, and that's all made that dull. Okay, and you make sure you put it on your hands because you don't want to transfer any oil from your hands onto this. So we flip that over. Now comes the finish coat on the bottom. Beautiful. See there, a bit of drip of resin. All you do, get your sandpaper, rub that off. You want it to be perfect. There we go. Looking good. Now, put a bit of acetone on my hands. Run this up here. Try and get any particles off. Your wet hand tends to pick it up. There we go. A little bit there as well. I'll scrape that off. That was just where the grip might have went on there. You want it all perfect. Okay. Now, I'll go over this with a bit of tape. And this picks up any bits of dust. And as I said, we want this to be dust free. There we go, that's pretty good. Do my hands again. And go up, fill a little bit here, just a couple of little spots where the resin dripped around, only, well not drip, tiny little splatter, so you make sure you get that off. Perfect. You just got to go over and check it because you want it to be as neat as possible. Again, I'll wet my hands again, do that again. Check this side. Your hand will pick up any variable that's there. There we go. Alright, now I'm going to tape it up. Now normally when I'm doing this bead, I leave it, but we're going to cut this back. So it's not hard, but you try and tape it up pretty neat, like I'm doing here. It won't take much to rub that down. You just want about a 1 mil bead, maybe 2 mil max. I have to put my little light here. There we go. I have to hold it in my mouth. There we go. Now I can see. Just can't talk properly. But some people might think that's a good thing. There we go. Oh, it's a bit of a dirty mark there. I'll get rid of that now. There we go. Just where it touched something, obviously. Go on. And this is what you're constantly fighting against. Things are always trying to get you. May have touched the wall in the Santa, whatever, but you're always rattling something that's trying to screw you over. There we go. As you can see, if I didn't have the torch, I wouldn't have much of a view. There we go. That's better. Yeah, if I didn't have the torch then, it wouldn't be a lot harder to see. So it does make it a bit easier. Put my extra bit of curtain tape on here. This just makes it so you don't drip onto the board. It's only shit tape. It's not price shit tape, it's quite expensive now. Back on here where it's come off. As I say, it's not great tape, this white stuff. You wouldn't use it for anything but something like this. There we go. Just check that it hasn't overlapped anywhere. No, looks good. I'll do it again with my tape. Obviously, I want to make sure I've got no particles of dust on here. You've got to go over it a few times. There we go. The natural finish coat is the hardest one to do. It's so hard. You've got to get it perfectly dust free in what I've got here. Now, mix up the mix. And once this is done, it's only going to take me about 10 minutes to wet and dry the bead tomorrow. And then it's ready for our trip to port on Tuesday. We'll be delivering it in the afternoon, about 3:30ish or something like that. So it'll be getting delivered to its home, or its temporary home. Now, always keep your finish coat brush in clean acetone. Never wash your finish coat brush in anything but clean acetone. Costs a little bit more. 3, 4. Now, wax solution in boiling hot water. Okay, which means all the wax is completely melted. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, that will now melt. Stay melted while I mix it into the resin, so there'll be no little particles like if dust has fallen all over it. That's when you know your wax hasn't gone off properly. It looks like there's a thin layer of dust over the whole board, and you don't want that. Okay, that's the worst case scenario for this type of thing. Right, harden's in. Give this a good stir. You want to stir this about, at least 30 times. Just a dab of this and rub it in there. Sometimes you have a tiny little air bubble that you don't rub it in with the resin. The resin doesn't quite get in there properly. There we go. Now put my little sock over it. Brush, non-contaminated. There we go. Now I'll do my fin first. So I'll pour a little bit out here. I'll just do the fin. So we want a good covering. But not too much. Okay. There we go. So just get that done. Go up a few times. I want to get a nice even coat on it. There we go. That's looking good. There. Let's spread this out here. So we paint this around here. Looking good. Okay, now we go crossways. Now we go up the other board. Looking good. Going to do it a bit different on this one. I'm going to check the fin. I want the fin to be good. So I'm going to brush up the fin. This is the only time I'll wipe the brush. And the last brush down the middle. That goes right next to the fin. Same on this side. I'm hoping. There we go. So that's done nicely there. I'll do one brush around the rail. Just to make sure the bead's all wet out perfectly, which it is. There we go. Just get that like that. Just check the fin. It's always hard getting this just right because it fights you. It doesn't want to sit. The finish coat doesn't want to sit a certain way. So you're constantly fighting with it on this part because it wants to separate and do all sorts of things you don't want it to do. It's looking pretty darn good there. Now, quick check for any hairs. Hoping I'm hair free on this one. There. Right. It's a hard one. You've got to get it just at the right time. Right, this is looking good. Just go over the fin at the top here a couple of times. It's one of those things where it's so difficult, it's so easy to not stuff up, but for it to go wrong. Constantly battling. Get here. Yep, that's clear. That looks good. I'll just do that bit here. Oh, I'm hoping I've got it. It's looking pretty darn good. And what this is the final finish we're going to have. Yeah, clean the brush. Unfortunately, you don't get it how do you put it, perfectly flat. It always has some brush marks in it, but you can't get around that. It's just part of the finish that you're doing. The ideal thing is not having lots of blobs at the bottom, which I've escaped from getting. So that looks good. So the side of the fin's looking acceptable, as we call it, but that's as good. We can never get it absolutely perfect in that way. That's the hard part about this finish, but okay, that's gelled. So I may have actually managed to, oh no, they're always the same. It always, when it dries, it always gets the satin look. It always looks even a bit better type thing. It's just one of those things with this finish. It's why no one does it. I haven't come across anyone else doing this finish in the industry yet now. It's well and truly dead and buried in a lot of people's to-do list, I suppose. But as I said, I want this board to look like it was made in the late 50s. Okay, that's what we're trying to accomplish on the blade. And I'm just looking at the side of the fin. That's finished up pretty well. You still have the brush marks in it. You can't get rid of that. But it's settled nicely. It's only one layer of resin. Normally you do 2 layers over a fin when you're polishing it, but this has only got the 1 layer. That's all I need. It's gelled. It's flat. Well, pretty happy with this. There's nothing I can do now. This is the finish. Okay, so we're pretty well. That's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. So that will just now gel and start to what we call wax up. But the fin looks beautiful. I'm happy with that. How it's sitting all around here. More than happy with that. And as I said, what we're trying to do is make it so when it's sitting where it's going, people think it's a board from the late 50s, early 60s. That's what we're trying to do. Shape is definitely it. This is why you're trying to accomplish in boards like this. It hasn't been overshaped. You know when they're overshaped, when they look like a modern board. You know when you've stopped at the right time is when it looks like, oh gee, that looks like an old log, you know. That's when you know you've done it right, if you're trying to create that, which I'm trying to do with this. So, not bad. See the little step you get next to the what do you call it, the panel? Looks bloody brilliant. Thin, clearish, but it's Volan, so looks great. And all the wax is starting to come up now. So it's going to have that satin look like it did on the deck. You can see it through there, it's coming through cloudy. All that wax will rise and it'll have that nice cloudy look. Anyway, that'll do. I'll wet and dry that lap tomorrow.